From the School of Life Foundation, this is another episode of What You Given, a broadcast based on the invitation, find what brings you joy and match it to the needs of the world. This becomes your gift. Everyone has something inside of themselves to give, and I want to know, what are you giving? In my interviews, we meet people from all walks of life. I am Jack Rolfe, and on the show today, we have Melissa Smith. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jack. Thank you. I'm excited to be here today with you.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm excited to have you on the show here as well and see where this journey over the next 30 minutes or so takes us. So I'd love to start out and just have you, so our listeners can share a little bit about your family, and then after that, share a little bit about Family Brand and what you're doing and where you're headed with that.
Yes. So my family consists of myself and my husband, and we have 5 kids, ages 14 to 5. And we have this thing that we call Family Brand. It's this thing that we felt inspired to a few years ago. It was modeled after things we had done in our family. And kind of people started asking us, and my husband loves talking about it. So he, as an entrepreneur, he just loves talking about ideas. And so people would get interested in that thing we were talking about. And so we kind of created this Family Brand program.
Well, that is wonderful. And I've listened to some of your podcasts, and one thing that I noticed, you talked about, it's a thing that your family does. If I'm correct in remembering all this, there's 3 things that you do as a family, or you did, to start a brand, that you teach others to start the brand. Is that correct?
Yeah. So to give a little more context, to that idea of a family brand, is we just realized that sometimes the intentionality that you give to your business or your brand, so we've owned businesses most of our marriage. And so, you put a lot of thought into, okay, what kind of culture do we want our business to have? How are we going to develop our employees and, do this kind of thing? But we realized we've never spent the time or the money like doing that for our own family. But sometimes, that thing is the thing that's most important. At the end of your life, we're going to wish like that's where we had put our main focus, So we kind of, we didn't know of anything out there that it was like, there's things out there like, okay, yeah, develop family values and set family goals, but it's just kind of left to you to decide. So we did do that, but then we kind of came up with a framework for other people. Like, how can you make it easier? Like, there's certain strengths that, research shows that strong families possess. So it's like, how do we use those strengths and help other people develop a brand and create stronger families, drawing from research and just your own uniqueness as a family. So develop a brand and a culture that really defines you and resonates with you and lets you live life more fully and more connected together.
That's wonderful. And when did you launch that specifically, Family Brand?
Well, it's a hard question because we've talked about it for a long time. And for the longest time, it was just this thing that we talked about amongst friends and associates. But I would say officially Family Brand launched just during quarantine, really. We saw a lot of, so that being April, I guess, of 2020, we just every day we're hearing more and more about families that marriages were struggling or their children were struggling. And we're like, we feel very called that this is something that we want to be talking about. And we feel that God wants us talking about how to have stronger families, it's hard to raise a family today. So I think any resource that we can be or connect people to is much needed in the world.
I thank you for sharing that. One of the things we talk about on this show, and we'll get into this more in a minute, but I just wanted to point it out. I like to say we have inspirational moments in our life, those moments when your soul speaks to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you had one of those moments, you and Chris, your husband. And the next step, though, is having courage to act upon that. And you did. And I'm, grateful for that. And, you mentioned we all have challenges in life, and families have challenges. And, knowing a little bit about you and your life, things weren't all rosy for you guys, right?
No, and that, if I were to, I've kind of up to this point given you the the high level version
Right.
of our story, but to get really down deeper, yeah. So Chris and I, we've been married 17 years, but at year 4, we just had our second son. He was just literally a few days old. Chris came home from work one day and he said, "Hey, I am just not happy and I don't want to be married anymore." And that took us down this soul searching, wrenching journey of are we actually going to remain a family? And if so, like we've got to do things differently than we have been. And so Family Brand was very much born out of just the necessity of us having to do things differently to keep our family and our marriage intact.
I appreciate you sharing those, personal things. And I think that's part of what makes the journey you're on even more powerful in helping. And because we all have challenges. And, the School of Life Foundation, one of the things we teach is that every challenge can either be a problem or it can be an opportunity. And the choice is ours.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you had challenges, and you dug deep. It's not easy, but you found the opportunities out of them. And that's not always a smooth sailing thing to do, is it?
No, and it absolutely was not smooth sailing for a long time. But looking back, I'm like, what a unique position, our separation and having to work through that. What a unique opportunity that gave us now as we speak to families and to parents and couples. It gave us such a unique perspective that I think a lot of times you don't hear from, I guess.
Yeah. Before we jump a little bit more into the process of these inspirational moments, I just want to take a second. Felt impressed to, you're doing good and you train families. And how would someone find you guys? What's the best way to locate Family Brand?
Yes. So I'll recommend 2 ways. We have a website called familybrand.com. And there's that. And then more day to day, I'll post on Instagram. If your listeners have Instagram, it's called Our Family Brand, OUR Family Brand.
Wonderful.
And I want to, if I could jump back just a second.
Yeah.
You talk about like these inspirational moments there. I just wanted to share, like, maybe, like I said, take it from that high level just to go a little bit deeper. Because I did have a cool inspirational moment, but it always makes me emotional. So I never like share it that often.
Yes.
But it was a really cool moment that I had, because we're just an average family, I never felt like I don't have degrees in anything that would, I used to work as a nurse, but I don't have a degree that qualifies me to speak about family, but so I found myself as I've had young children, I've been a stay-at-home mom to them. I worked as a nurse occasionally, but I always thought when my kids get older, I will go back to working as a nurse, probably.
Yeah.
But I felt like, as my youngest was getting older, she was probably 3 or 4 at the time, I realized, I don't know if nursing is my next thing. And so I was just super prayerful about it. I listened to this podcast at the time that talked about this idea of how to discover your next thing, but it talked about it in a unique way. that said, when you're praying and asking God these type of questions, it's like the question that you should be asking is, how can I build your kingdom? And I don't know if your listeners, what percentage of them subscribe to a belief in God, but for me, this was very like pivotal for me. Or you could, speak to the universe or whatever. But for me, that prayer over time, like, how can I build your kingdom, God? One day I got this message so clearly, like my next thing was to build families. Like that's what I am meant to do. And again, I don't feel, excuse me, I don't feel qualified necessarily to do it, but I do have life experiences that I feel like put me in a unique position to do it. And I think with so many things, it's like, are we willing to put ourselves out there, and are we willing to open our mouths and do those things that are on our heart that we want to do?
It's obvious that's very tender for you to share that, and grateful for you sharing that. I'm having one of those goosebumps moments as you do share that. And I too believe things are divinely led, and I know that looks different for everybody, and we celebrate and appreciate that. And I love a quote from Mark Twain, and he says, the two most important days in your life is the day you were born and the day you find out why. And I believe that why is our purpose. It's our mission in life. And, we find that at different ages of life, at different times of life. Sometimes we will have found that purpose, and then it morphs and becomes something more. But I'm grateful for you sharing that, because as we have people listen to this broadcast, our goal is to try to help individuals find their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're all living our purpose and lifting each other up, life will just be so much better for all of us. And I'm having a tender moment myself, Melissa, talking about that right now. And that's the part of the process. There's this process in life that I truly believe that we go through, and we don't even realize that we're going through it. And the process, I call it discovering, developing, and delivering. And the discovering is discovering what our talents are, what our skills are, what our likes are. And as you were talking about, you have this nursing background, but you don't have any degrees or anything in family, although you probably got the biggest degree because you have a family of 5 children, right?
That is true.
That's a pretty good education in and of itself right there. But you have found, because you've listened to these inspirational moments, that you actually do have some skills and talents because of your passion about building families. And so that's the discovery phase. And then the developing phase is turning that into what your purpose and mission is. And for you right now, it's family brand, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and what you're doing, that's what you're about. And that's what evolves in your household and outside of your household. And the third one, developing, is your gift. And I'm going to hold on to that one for a minute. I'm going to back up here. So
Okay.
The first part of our invitation on the show is find what brings you joy. I think we already know what your answer is to that, but I'm going to ask you, and you define it maybe even better for us. What brings Melissa Smith joy in life?
That is a great question. So we just spent the last year living in Hawaii. We've never lived there before. And it was such a beautiful exploration for me of this kind of very thing, like what brings me joy. So I love being outside. I love warm weather. I love, I love spending, I love being in the kitchen. I love cooking. I love cooking with my kids. I love playing games with my kids. I've been playing volleyball lately. I've been loving volleyball. I love date night with my husband. We try and get date night every single week. I love real estate. I've been investing in real estate the last couple of years and I'm loving that. And I love trying to find like little moments. Just, I know, I think so much of life is just these little average moments, but I think for me, the magic is finding the joy in those little moments, whether it's jumping on the trampoline or, whatever it is.
Wow, that's great. That'd be great advice for all of us, finding joy in those little simple moments. And I'm suspecting most of those are when you're with your family. And so I'm going to slide into the second part of this here with that. So with that bringing you joy, how are you matching it to a need in the world? And again, I think we know some of your answer knowing about Family Brand and what you're doing, but you dig a little deeper on that. What's a need in the world that you are using your joy to make something better?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind, first of all, is mine and my husband's relationship. As I mentioned earlier, it has been at times rocky. But I feel like what we've built today is, I would never have imagined that we would be as happy as and as connected as we are now. So I feel like that in the world is, maybe a need in the world. Like we just, we have a podcast actually, and we just had someone reach out to us a few weeks ago saying he was from a different country even. And he's like, I just stumbled on your podcast and in my life, I don't have any examples of good, strong marriages and families. So thank you for being an example to me of a strong marriage and what a strong family looks like. So that I think he said he was 22, so that I can one day have that for myself. So I think the need that I feel as, things that bring me joy that I feel like bringing to the world is maybe just that hope for people that you can create the family that you want. You can create the marriage that you want in your life.
Wow, that feels so spot on. And here's what I'm thinking as you're sharing that, Melissa, that here's Chris and Melissa Smith with their 5 children, and they are trying to live life as a strong family and doing good things. And that in and of itself can change the world, because if one person, even this person that from another country that saw that example, now feels like that gives them something to reach for them, for a family, you've changed the world with that. I mean, we don't have to change the world for everybody. If we change it for even one person, it's a better place. And so thank you for not only sharing that, but for living that example. And then having, though, the courage and the grit and the fortitude to do something about it. And, to put it out there through this family brand in trying to help others, because as you help another family, it's inevitable that they'll then become an example to somebody. And it just keeps moving, right along. And we don't do good things. You're not doing family brand to, for numbers, gosh, how many families we're going to change, this or that. That's not why you're doing it. But you'll never know how far reaching it is. And I know you're not worried about that, but there's things happening and changing because of that. And that's the same for anybody. So whoever's listening on this show today, whatever brings you joy in life and whatever you're doing to match it to a need in the world, you're making an impact. And we need that. And that's that third. Yeah, it is. And that's that third part of delivery. As I opened the show saying, we all have a gift inside of us, and we need to give it, share it to the world. That's the delivery part. And that's what you're doing. And as I share with that, tell me, are your children involved with this? And if so, how do they feel about this family brand? And yeah, tell me about that.
Yes, so they're not involved in the day-to-day like operation, I guess you could say, of the business, but they are very much, they're like our what would I say? They're like living it though. Like any new idea that we might have, we're always like are running it through the kids. And every aspect of family brand wouldn't be possible without them. So they're very much involved, but just not like with the day to day. I don't know if I answered that very well.
No, you did. They're involved because they're living it. And that made me think too that, through the example that you and Chris are setting, hopefully, your 5 children will go on and have their own family brand, right? And
totally.
Yeah, and keep moving that forward. And go ahead.
Maybe I'll just interject an example.
Okay.
So we have, as part of family brand, we've developed, these values that we have. And I would say the way that it involves the kids is every day it's part of our just language and who we are. One recent example is I was out with my daughter. She wanted to go paddle boarding. This is a few months ago. And she was having a really, really hard time stand-up paddleboarding. She was maneuvering the paddleboard. And one of our family values is Smiths can do hard things. And these are values that we've decided on together that they were part of. And so we talked about, this is a really hard thing, like learning how to do this new skill, this new activity, but I know that you can do it because you can do hard things. That's who you are. So that's just one like practical example of how they are living our family brand every day.
Yeah, I'm grateful you shared that because in some respects that's a little thing, right? But yet it's a huge thing. And the learning that she went through just with that one example is wonderful. And that made me think too. And as we started out the show today, I referenced, there's 3 things that you use as you're training, sharing with other families and building their family brand. And there's one of those 3 things that really stuck out with me as I was kind of looking and studying it. And I think it fits with our show. So I want to run it by you so we can hear it right from yourself on it. And that's, it's what do you want to be remembered by someday? So explain that to us a little bit and how that fits in your family.
Yeah. So I think, like I alluded to earlier, when you're thinking about a brand, these are questions that you kind of run through. Like, what do we want to be known for, as a brand or a business? And we just realized like, I've never really thought about that before. These important questions.
Yeah.
A lot of times they just are never talked about. So, a lot of times your culture in your family just happens by default. And I think this is a great question, to show that. And so for us, something that we as a Smith family want to be known for is we want to be known for elevating and inspiring. Like when someone thinks of us like 10 years down the road, like, remember that Smith family? Like it just felt good. It felt good to be around them. Like they were inspiring and they always elevated us. And I don't know, that's just what we have chosen for our family.
That's a great thing. And those people that were influenced and remember that, they might not remember specifically something you said or something you did around them or whatever, but they remember what you just shared, what they felt around and from your family. And that's something where it's, spreading inspiration to others. And that comes from how we live our life. And so I think that's something that we all should strive to be remembered for someday. And it kind of fits in with, what we encourage individuals, finding what brings them joy and matching it to the needs of the world. and let that be the thing that you're remembered for. But
Yeah.
ultimately it comes back to whatever that is. It's inspirational. It's inspiring others. And so that's just wonderful. I'm excited. I appreciate that. And you know, I know we could literally, I could talk with you for hours here. It's very easy and comfortable to talk to you, and there's so many great things you have to share. But kind of wrapping some of this and bringing it to a close, the final question on all the shows I do that I asked our guests, and I'm going to ask you now, is for those listening today, if there was just one thing that they learned from this episode, this podcast from Melissa Smith, what would be that one thing you want them to remember?
Okay, the thing that's coming to my mind right now is actually something that's our family motto, but I think it fits perfectly with our conversation here. So, and it goes, we believe you can be who you want to be. And so I think that anyone listening, you know, you're talking about finding your joy and matching that, like you can be whoever you want to be. You could do whatever you want to do. I think so often as humans, we have this voice in our head that tells us, you know, who am I to do this, or you're not capable, and all the reasons why, but you can be who you want to be.
That is fantastic. And yes, we have all of these voices in our head telling us we're not good enough to be who we want to be. We're not this, we're not that, but we can be who we want to be. And so listeners, that was your nugget. I mean, there's a lot of nuggets here today, but we're ending with that nugget. You can be who you want to be. And so go out and do that. And, you know, in closing up, as you're listening, just with that last note, remember that your heart feels for you. Your mind reasons for you, but your soul speaks to you. Are you listening? Did you listen today? If so, what did you hear? And what did you learn? And will you now have the courage to go act upon what you felt? Thank you for tuning in. Please follow us on your podcast app or subscribe to the YouTube channel so that each new episode is always downloaded, ready for you to listen in and share with others. We always love to have you leave a review as well. If you want to send us a message or desire to be on the show, you can send an email to whatchagiven@gmail.com. A special thanks goes to our producers, Ben and Kayla Martin. Now it is time to move upward and onward and ask yourself, what you given?